Okay, we're going live now. Please go live on Twitter.
Okay, live on Twitter also.
Sorry?
Twitter में Janus Binance में already.
Sorry, Binance है.
Next one.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining in one more time. My name is Vaibhavv. You can call me Vali. And today we have a very interesting guest joining us with an incredible life story. We have Jimmy, who's joining us. Jimmy, welcome to Aura 8. How have you been?
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to the audience, especially for those of you in the Middle East. I am in the US now, but I make lots and lots of appearances in the UAE and surrounding areas. So I'm well, having a good warm summer in the US, but we'll start international travels again in a few weeks.
So, Jimmy, you have spoken about being a Vietnamese refugee who arrived in America when you were 2 years old. Clearly, you had no control over where your parents were taking you. You spent 21 years as a top intellectual property and digital rights media lawyer.
Yes.
How was that journey from being a refugee in a country that perhaps your brothers from your own country, which is, I think at that time, Vietnam, would have perhaps looked down upon moving to America, which had like such a long war? And how did the people in America take you in terms of how was your childhood there as someone who perhaps moved from Vietnam to America? I think that be a very, very interesting bit to start first.
Thank you for asking that question. It actually informs a lot of why I spend a lot of time working in emerging markets and developing countries now on tech development. But we have to go back in time and remember that at this time, Vietnam was split into two countries. It's like North Korea and South Korea today. In the 1950s, a lot of countries after the World War II went through this period of what to do about, long-term British or other European colonial rule. And Vietnam was split into North Vietnam, which was a communist country, and South Vietnam, which was supported by the US and other Western countries as an attempted democratic republic. And so the war that was fought in Vietnam before I was born was an effort by North Vietnam and the leaders who believed that the country should be reunited. There was this nationalist movement saying, why are foreigners down in the South? We should reunite the whole country. So my parents lived in the south of Vietnam in Saigon, and my father was a judge in the government. And so when it became clear that after the US essentially pulled out of defending South Vietnam in the last couple of years, the North Vietnamese military and government basically advanced on South Vietnam and took over the country. So the country that I was born in does not exist anymore. It technically does not exist. So it actually was, I think, a relatively easy decision for my parents to say, we need to leave. A lot of South Vietnamese people left. They were concerned. And for my father in particular, because he was a government official, he was at higher risk once the country was taken over by the North Vietnamese. Now, that was generations ago. And obviously, there's a lot of friendliness now between the U.S. and Vietnam. But the U.S. government, what was not as much known to the public, is they see the footage of people on the embassy rooftop trying to get onto helicopters to escape the country. My family was lucky enough to be one of a number of government and military-related families helped out by the U.S. government on aircraft carriers, big giant ships, taken out of Saigon Harbor the night before Saigon fell, the fall of Saigon in April April of 1975. So I was a 2-year-old baby. I have absolutely no memory of this whatsoever. My older brother and sister do remember it. But we were actually taken out by, as part of the half of Vietnam, South Vietnam, that was supported by the US government. So it wasn't being taken out by an enemy, it was being taken out by allies who realized that they were leaving behind people who might be at threat. This issue came up again over the last few years when the US sort of left Afghanistan and didn't prepare as well as they could have in terms of what happens to the people, the interpreters, the translators, the local officials who were supporting them. They might be at risk. So the US did it fairly last minute. I was taken out. My parents, like a lot of those people at the time, had no idea where they would end up. So it's not that you leave knowing this is where we're taking you. They were taken off on military aircraft carriers, taken to eventually to military bases. Manila in the Philippines, where the U.S. had a big military base. Then eventually we were flown to Guam, to refugee camps, again, where the U.S. had a military base to house thousands of refugees until it could be determined what to do with them, because you can't take people who don't know the language, who've never been to America, and just plop them, in a city and say good luck. And so there was a U.S. government effort, including an act of Congress, to essentially provide an immigration path in for refugees of Southeast Asia. And then we waited in Guam until a church or charitable organization would volunteer in different communities across the U.S. to say, we'll take that family and we'll sponsor them in. But other people from the South Vietnamese refugee population ended up in France, which was friendly and obviously had colonized Vietnam. And later, after the whole boat people journey, Australia started taking in a lot of families. So we got taken in by the US. That was sort of the first wave. We were among the very first people to enter the US and got resettled into Southern California, only because my parents wanted someplace warm. Vietnam's a very warm, tropical climate. And the only place my father knew actually was Florida. So I remember growing up as a kid, he had this canvas bag because my parents left literally with just a canvas bag of clothing and a baby in each hand. They had a 2-year-old, me, and a 3-year-old, and 2 older kids. And he wrote on the bag, Florida, because that's the only sort of warm place he knew. But we ended up, through the help of a church, having Southern California selected as our place. That's where I grew up and why I ended up going to school and becoming a lawyer in Los Angeles.
Incredible. I'm sure your dad must be very proud, in terms of how you grew to be a lawyer and kind of followed his footsteps.
He always wanted one of his sons to be a lawyer, and in the U.S. And my brother did not become a lawyer. He actually tried to become a lawyer in the U.S. He took night English classes and night classes at a local law school to prepare himself to study for the California bar exam, which he sat for, but could not pass. Because I can't imagine trying to take a bar exam, for example, in Urdu, right, or in Hindi, or in Mandarin, in another language. He tried. He even still has the paper ticket that was the sort of the entrance ID from that experience, because I think he was proud that he tried.
Incredible. Stories like these really make me very happy, because a big fan of the underdog stories. But then if I want to,
Yes.
if I may dig a little deep in terms of your father, like how was he treated? Like, was he, because he from a judge and then suddenly into a country, where the law is
Yeah.
different, like he wouldn't have got the same kind of respect in the society that he would receive in Vietnam. How did he manage his self-esteem, his sane mind to say, there's a new chapter in life? Because a lot of people at that position cannot reinvent themselves.
Yeah. Honestly, I cannot imagine it, having to do it myself, because my parents, he would have been about 40 years old at the time, and he has 4 children. A 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old, 2 babies. So you have a family of 6 to support. In short, without ever expressing in the decades I have witnessed this, any bitterness. Because it was not easy for him. He did not become a lawyer in the US. He was not clearly a judge. His first job, which was, facilitated by the church that sponsored our family into the country. Like, you had help. The church found us an apartment to live at for free for a year and put my parents in English classes, helped them try to find their first jobs. But my father's first job went from being a judge on a bench with immense power in Vietnam to being an orderly in a nursing home, cleaning bedpans and floors. And then he got some other odd jobs, and eventually he got what he thought was a really good job working for the U.S. Postal Service. Any government job in the Vietnamese culture is, good, but he was a mailman. He delivered mail, walking, in the heat or in the rain for many years. And he was really then proud of the fact that he then was able to shift into working inside. So he didn't have to work, outside anymore. In fact, one of the things I remember as a child, him saying to me and my brothers, he always wanted his sons to have jobs and career paths in the US, no matter what it was, where they did not have to work outside. Because he did, since he was a youngster in Vietnam. He grew up poor in Vietnam before he became a judge. My mom came from a more noble sort of class of family, and he was in the military in Vietnam. So that is one of the things that's struck with me. And when I look at young people in emerging countries across the world who are hopeful and wanting to work in tech or business and law, that really strikes my mind, because he has had to work outside. Right. And he always wanted for one of his sons, both of his sons, to not do that. But it was not easy for him. People made fun of him and our family, because you have to remember, this is in the 1970s. Now there's a big Asian population all across the US, and Vietnamese people in particular are very, there's big communities of them. You see Vietnamese restaurants everywhere, right? But at the time, we were in a neighborhood. I think we were only one of 2 Asian families in the entire town. So people made fun of him and my mom, right? People made fun of me when I went to school, and he didn't speak English that well. He was very educated, so he spoke some French and some English, and he picked it up. But you always have a thick Asian accent, right? Vietnamese accent. And now there's a much greater presence of Asian, South Asian, Hispanic diversity. But at the time, when you're one of only 2 families in a place and you're the first, I can't imagine how hard that would have been. And so, yeah, it was not easy. I remember my mom telling us that, the neighbors would come make fun of us. And when we left that apartment to buy my parents' first house, the landlord even basically said to my mom, well, how could you do that? You guys haven't been here long enough. He wouldn't have been able to make enough money to go buy a house.
Well, we are Asians. We know how to save every single bit.
Oh, I have a really good story. You want a really good emotional story about how that happened? And it relates to actually one of my interests in Bitcoin, which is about the ability to have assets that can be transferred across the world without restriction and preserve their value. When my parents left, they brought lots of banknotes, Vietnamese, South Vietnamese currency, Vietnamese dong, which of course became worthless. Yeah. Because it was from a country that doesn't exist anymore. So I used to play with it like Monopoly money as a kid. They had these huge stacks of it shoved in their bag. But my, parents had an instinct that South Vietnam was at risk of falling. And so for some months before, my mom would go to the bank to try and take out cash. But then the bank started running out of cash. It was like a run on the bank where a lot of people know the country's in trouble and they're trying to take out, cash. So she took some of the cash that she could pull out and started buying gold. And on their journey out of Vietnam, she wrapped the pieces of gold she had, because she was concerned about it getting stolen or lost on this whole long journey to we have no idea where we're going, and a piece of fabric that she had tied around her waist underneath her shirt that she never took off for months. And after my parents got to the US, worked there for a couple of years. Sorry, I get emotional with telling this story. I've told it on some stages. She eventually, a couple of years later, sold those pieces of gold in the US to afford the down payment for my parents' first house. And my parents had, especially for my mom's side of the family, a lot more assets, land, they were well off by Vietnam standards by the time my family left. My dad going from peasant to, a family to, very, a powerful judge and having money. But that was all lost, completely lost, inaccessible, except for these pieces of gold. So I wish for us a world financial system where whatever value and assets people, especially people from hard countries, emerging, developing countries build, that they can access and use across borders.
In fact, a lot of people, when they were moving from Pakistan to India, and India to Pakistan.
Yeah.
And since you have been in this region quite a bit,
Yes.
you know that Indian and Pakistani families, like in the head, we love gold,
Oh, I know.
right? Right.
I've been to your weddings. Yeah.
and
Yes.
and by the way, we don't consider 14 carat as gold at all.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
For us, it is 22 carat.
Or
If you're
or
really
nothing, yeah.
poor, maybe 18, right? So all the cool fashion jewelry you see by Dior and Chanel, by saying 14 karat gold, it's not even considered gold
Right.
back home. So a lot of people, when the war was happening, sorry, not the war, but when India received its independence and people were given a chance to move and the communal rights.
I mean, it's very similar to what happened in Vietnam. Countries get split and they,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I know of families who actually, what's the word in English? Because in India, we generally speak English, which is a bit of Hindi, but mostly English. I'm getting the English word for it, but the English word is where you, they grounded the gold jewelry. So this beautiful intricate designs were just grounded, and they and since you know a bit of a culture, the salwar they wear, the bottom part of it, which is tied up with a string, is where the gold was shoved in for the transportation.
Very smart.
So
I mean,
your
Asian mothers, man, they are the wisest of all. They,
absolutely.
But she was just really concerned, it might get lost or stolen, and I never knew that story until I got older. But when she went to tell the landlord of the apartment, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, all these people, and I never had my own room to much, older in life. And she told me the story that he made fun of. He was in disbelief. He couldn't believe, that this little Asian immigrant family could, with low jobs. This was not, they went to the US and my dad became a lawyer again. They were working, my mom was a seamstress in a big giant sewing factory. My dad was, washing hospital, beds until he got his mailman job, right? And even that's not a very high paying job in the US. So I can't imagine it at all. I know growing up as a child that I was different because we were Asian and I spoke Vietnamese at home, and then you start going to school and it's a different language. So I was very aware of the fact that we were not from there and that we didn't have much money. But I don't know any different. I look back at my life and whereas my older brother and sister remembered growing up at a time in Vietnam where that is the country, right? They are the majority, not just the majority, almost the entire population. My father is influential. The family has money. I have no idea what that's like. Right. Where it's interesting, the difference between me and my older siblings and our perspectives in life, because I think, I don't want to get into all the family things, but I think they look at life very differently because they feel like they lost something. I never knew what it was in the first place. So my whole life I knew that I was expected to work hard, study really well in school, be the best at everything, because that was the only way to succeed.
I'm so curious about the mindset shift your father had, but I don't know if you know this. So this is a live stream, so this is going out live.
Yeah.
I do another podcast where I drive people in my car and have a conversation.
Oh, love it. It's yeah. Do you make me sing too?
We just talk about love, life, and a bit of work.
Yeah.
But I think
next time I'm in the UAE, we're going out for a drive.
No. By the way, we do this across the world. We have done this in Dubai. We have done this in Hong Kong. Done this in Bangkok, which is very, very challenging.
Yeah.
Done this in Bangalore.
You should do it in a tuk-tuk in Bangkok, but then you can't hear anything.
Yeah. But there is one thing that I want to ask you.
Yes.
Is that did you receive the same Vietnamese treatment even in America? Like, did you get slapped around as a kid by your parents? Because I think that's the way every Asian household has
Yes.
ever disciplined their children.
Luckily, I was the super good golden child. You know, I was like the smartest of the kids in school, and
So
generally
you got
very
away.
obedient.
So you got away.
So, but there were a few times there were a few times. I mean, it's funny. I grew up as a kid being more afraid of my father because he was very strict. But now, as I get older, I realize my mom is he's the more progressive liberal one, and she's the more old school fashioned one. But yeah, there were a few times, there were my mom. She, there were a few times. I didn't get it as much as my siblings, but that, yep, they're that.
What?
I'm fully aware of that cultural history.
Well, being aware is one, and being victim to is another.
It did happen a few times. I'm not going to claim I was the perfect child at all times, but
For all the guys watching, when I first went to Vietnam, I think I was hosting Eat Vietnam back
yeah.
then.
It's an amazing country
And
now. It's amazing. I go a lot now as well, but
Pho noodles is my favorite, by the way.
Oh my god.
Pho noodles.
Oh, there's others. You got to try
I
Bún Bò Huế. There's so many. Okay, we have to go to Vietnam together. We can do the drive in Vietnam.
We should actually do that. And the beauty of Vietnam is that there are so many Michelin star restaurants where you can get a meal in a meager few dollars, right? You don't have to spend like a few $100 that you do in Hong Kong or in Singapore or in US. And the food is like, wow. So
I know it's my favorite food in the world, and obviously I'm biased because I grew up in it. But people always ask me, "What's your favorite food?" I love Thai food as well. It's number 2 for me. But Vietnamese food, I can't get enough of it, and it's having a big boom in the U.S. because for a while it was very difficult to find good Vietnamese there. But in Vietnam, oh, it's amazing. And you're right, it's really inexpensive. You do not eat Vietnamese food unless you're eating on a plastic stool on a sidewalk, and it's hot. And there's a loud Vietnamese mother yelling at you to finish your food faster.
Well, I would slightly like to add in there. I think that's true for any Asian food that you want to try.
Oh my God. Well, like I've been to Pakistan many times, and my favorite places are not people sometimes because you're the foreign business person, they try to take you to the nicest place. I'm like, no. I don't want to eat at the Serena Hotel again, right? I was in Faisalabad for a wedding with, my business partners at one of our companies in the UAE for his daughter's wedding in Faisalabad. And there's this one lamb mutton place that's literally on the street, that's on a messy street that I'm like, oh my God, I have to go back there. And they did take me there. It's my favorite.
I don't know whether I would ever get a chance to go to Pakistan, but I would love to visit. I've traveled so many countries, but this country being so close to ours, but because of the history.
I know, and it's unfortunate, right? And it's similar to, when North and South Vietnam got split, people had a choice. Which side do you go to? My mom's from the North. Her family did not want to be in that government, so she went to the South. And then for years, there was families didn't see each other because, it was the hostility. So I think that's unfortunate. And maybe you and I can help bring prosperity and peace to the world.
So I'll tell you, my name is Vaibhavv Ali. And so Ali, I'm sure it's a Muslim name, but Vaibhav is a very authentic Hindu name. Mm-hmm. So that is exactly what I tell people when they are, when they're eager to know my religion and my views and my thoughts, especially in India, because the politics is such that you have to be careful with what you speak, I would say.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. And I think that it's why, the Vietnam was closed off to the West for several decades after the end of the war. And my parents, for example, have never been back to the country. And when I first told them I was going to go back, this was, some 20 years ago, my mother freaked out. Now, because she was like, why are you going back there? Because she has this sense of hostility all these years later. And obviously, it's different now, and especially with the young generation that is booming now. Like a lot of developing countries, more than half the population is under 30. In Vietnam, they have no memory of that past time in life or the hostility, and they want to be involved in the Western world. So, and of course, tech is booming there, and blockchain and AI.
Absolutely.
And so, I've been asked to come back and support a number of things, trying to find some projects to do there because because of that hostility, what happened in Vietnam, and I hope it doesn't happen in other places around the world, there's this missing generation of people my age and of experience level in profession that are not there to help guide and nurture the entrepreneurs, the tech startups in Vietnam who have great ideas and they hit a certain point and they don't know how to grow internationally, right? They've never had to raise capital outside of Vietnam. And unlike in the US, where there's this huge Silicon Valley community of people who can, mentor people, right? Because, there's Mark Zuckerberg, he's done it before. Now he can, give advice to someone else about how to do it themselves who's younger. That is completely missing in Vietnam.
And I think you have such an important point there, such an important point, because they have no one to really look up to in the terms of, for guidance, and especially with Western media has overtaken everything possible. Yeah. Though I think Korean movies are great, Indian movies are fantastic. We produce like majority of the movies in the world. Even even in Pakistan, they pirate our movies and they watch because they don't officially release there. But this is I think a very important challenge. In fact, I would love to connect you with all my network in Vietnam.
And I've been meeting some of them. So there are people who have come back who have been successful in the US or studied in the US and have come back and have launched a few. There are several venture capital funds that are really trying to support tech startups there with people who have been successful in the US. So it's not that there's no one there, but this is a more recent phenomenon, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years. And I'm trying to, do my part in terms of finding some projects and ventures to work on, both small and big. But that's why I started making some trips back there over the last few years. I've loved it because the country is very different than when I first went back 20 years ago. My mother freaks out every time I go because it's part of like a generational, right?
Absolutely.
Hostility. She can't get it out of her head. Where I'm trying to tell her it's totally different than when you were there, Mom.
In fact, please tell your mother that I've, as an Indian, been to Vietnam at least about 7-8 times, and it's been very pleasant. Love the people there. Love the vibe there, and it is nothing as what she has in her mind.
What's your favorite city there?
I've been to 2. I've been to Phuc Quoc, the island.
Yes.
And I've been to Saigon, which is Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi Minh City. I know that, of course, now they because everyone calls it HCMC now. To me it's Saigon, but I'm starting to get in my head it's HCMC. Hanoi's nice as well. My favorite place to go through is Da Nang, which is the 3rd largest city. It's in the middle. It's a beach town where, unlike Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, it actually is on coast and beach, but there's also a city. And the government there is really pushing it to become the new sort of high-tech capital of Vietnam. There's a high-tech park being built. Friends of mine who run an IT infrastructure company called IP.
Solana also did an event, I think, last year there.
Yes. And I have friends building on a project to build the first international AI data center there. Because it has the land, unlike Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, right, which is already crowded, it has the land and space available to support, such initiatives. But that's my favorite city, and it's actually the last place my father was stationed as a judge before he had to leave. And I had not been to it until a few years ago. I got asked to speak, be a keynote speaker by the Ministry of Communications and IT of Vietnam, which was an interesting trip back to my parents' house to say, hey, I'm going to Vietnam at the invitation of the government you fled from to be the keynote speaker at their Future of Internet conference to explain to them blockchain technology and how it can, affect the future of IPv6 and internet and things. And my mom didn't quite get it at all, but my father, he just went, And my parents, he talk like this is not racist. My father goes, sound very important what you do.
See, also for every...
But I passed by the courthouse. But that my
you did?
Yeah, my dad asked me if I saw it. I said I did, because there's only one main courthouse. I said I saw it, took a picture, and he said, yep, that's it. And so, I'm glad because, there's very few things that remind him, I think, of his prior life.
Glory, yeah. I totally get that. In fact, wanted to add something there. Vietnam Sorry. I was talking about being, since you mentioned the word racism, it's a word for the West. We, from the countries that we come from, it is. You can't even call it casual racism. It's the way we talk, right? It is the way we define others in terms of color, in terms of weight, in terms of height, in terms of the place that we come, and this is happening from centuries. Suddenly, with the feminism culture coming from the West, now I hear that a lot of women, who are above the age of 40, and sorry, not 40, 45 to 50, they believe that they bought the wrong concept of feminism, and that is why a lot of people from the West, who are technically called passport bros, went to the East, and they got someone who could actually take care of them and not say that, hey, I don't cook for my husband. My husband cooks for himself. I'm like, what the hell?
Wow.
No.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And the most funniest thing that I've seen in Vietnam is that, for me as an Indian, you drive on the wrong side of the road, which is also in the UAE, but it's a right-hand drive car. So it is American rules, but UK spec cars in Vietnam, and that is so crazy. I have ridden a lot of bikes in my life, but I've never drove a bike on the wrong side of the road, and I have to wait for others to follow them.
I know I should do it because it's a cultural thing in Vietnam, all the moped stuff, but I can't in Vietnam. I'm too afraid.
Okay, so
you can grab an Uber or a Grab car there for less than $2 to get anywhere. Which is, I feel bad sometimes when I get out of the car and I get the receipt and I'm like, my God, that only costs, 45,000 Vietnamese dong, which is less than $2.
So people like me are called coconuts. If we go into US, we are brown, but from inside we are white. Now, what do they call you? Because
2 words, two choices.
Okay.
Would you like the 2 choices? Twinkie or banana?
Okay. Okay.
Banana. Usually it's banana.
I love
because it's more, especially for these people who are from a tropical country. Have you heard the term jungle Asians and fancy Asians?
No, I haven't.
It comes from this comedian. She's a half Vietnamese, half Chinese comedian who's famous in the U.S. named Ali Wong. And her first big Netflix, stand-up comedy show.
Oh, yeah.
She watch it.
When
She
was pregnant, she was doing
yes. She's in that animal print dress, right? And I watched it. She said, "I'm half fancy Asian and half jungle Asian," because the fancy, she's half Chinese, fancy Asian, and then the Vietnamese is the jungle Asian, like Thailand, Philippines, and the sort of the tropic hot parts. And then the fancy Asians, there tend to be the more economically strong countries, right, in Asia, like China, Japan, Korea.
Absolutely.
So
lovely. So 30
have
minutes.
Their own racist terms. I don't know if it's racist. Yeah.
I think it is just the packaging that is sold at, right? The same cigarette in China and the same cigarette in Saigon versus the same cigarette in Dubai. The tobacco is different, but the paper and the packaging is different, but it kind of gives you the same effect when you kind of abuse in your own mother tongue, right? The feel is perhaps more impactful than just calling someone a fucker.
Well, I'm glad to know you're a coconut. I'll be the banana and you can be the coconut. Yeah, and I totally was, especially when you ask about what it's like growing up as an immigrant refugee. One of the things that happens, especially for me at that time when there was no internet, so you don't see lots of Asian people, can't connect with anyone. You try extra hard to fit in and not be Asian. Right, you sort of run away from your heritage. Where now, as later in life, I sort of embraced it much more and felt like, oh no, I need to be doing things in Asia. I need to be connecting sort of with my Vietnamese roots. But when you're young and you're one of the first people into a community that looks like you sort of you almost run away from it. The emergence of the internet and the explosion of media.
Now that is called reverse racism.
Yeah. Asian self-loathing. That's what we would call it in the US. Okay.
Good one. Good one. I'm very keen to know about you being associated with BSV
Yep.
as the founding president and the CEO of Nchain. But how was your association with Craig White? Now, especially looking back with all the drama, legal warfare, technical vision, did you believe that he was Satoshi? Like, did you believe at some point of time you were like, yes, this guy is the guy? Be honest here.
Sure. Look, I've always been super honest about it. It's not that I don't want to talk about it now. I just sort of, that was a chapter that closed, but I'm happy to talk about it. I have talked about it since then. So, geez, how much time do you have? And I've been, people ask me to write books about this now. And there's a couple movies being made about sort of the whole experience. So it's this is its whole own show one day. And obviously it's the thing I'm most known for from my early Bitcoin journey. So I do get asked about it a lot. And there's a lot of controversy around it also. People want to know, but, so how do I explain this? Well, I first became interested in and started looking at Bitcoin as a lawyer. I was a tech lawyer. And so a lot of my clients when you're a tech lawyer, you're always having to learn about the next new thing, right? It was internet, then social media came along, then, mobile apps. And then at some point, Bitcoin emerged. I had a lot of clients in the online gaming world, including sports betting, online gambling, as well as more traditional video games that started looking at adopting Bitcoin as a payment alternative because payment processors don't like to support, online gaming clients if it's gambling related. And even for the more traditional game clients, some companies started looking at in-game virtual currencies, right? Essentially the tokens of what we have today or in-game virtual items. So it sort of came into my life as a lawyer. And then one day the name Craig Wright popped up because, some clients of mine basically got connected to him in Australia, believed he was Satoshi Nakamoto, creator of Bitcoin, moved him from Australia to London to start a new company, which became Nchain. It was called something else at the time. I suggested that we change it to Nchain, so it was more clear it was a blockchain company. And they knew at this point, I had been a lawyer for about 20, some years, and I was getting bored. To be honest, I was on paper successful. This is an interesting life lesson I talk about, where with us Asian people, sometimes these overachieving immigrant, minority kids, we sometimes, feel like we have to overachieve. But then we never ask ourselves, what are we working so hard to achieve? We're, as I call it now, checking off boxes. I checked off a lot of boxes. I graduated, I did the thing every Asian mother loves. I graduated school early so that she could forever brag to her relatives. My son, Jimmy, he already done with college. Why your son's still in school? So I finished, high school at 16, university at 19, and law school at 22. So I started being a lawyer at a very young age. So even when I left law after 21 years, I was still, like 43, I was still, fairly young in professional years. So I was thinking of doing other things. I wasn't sure what. And this topic of Craig Wright came into my life. And I didn't think about it too much. It's like some people are in the Bitcoin world are very interested, obsessed to a certain extent about whether or not who is Satoshi Nakamoto. It's the internet's biggest mystery, and it has been for a while. I think there was a period of time where that was a really hot topic. I think today people care less because Bitcoin has grown into a more institutional sort of industry. And so I think it matters less to people, but for a period of time, that was a hot topic of interest. I was interested in supporting a business or a mission or movement to build new wide-scale technology. I was an early lawyer at the beginning of the internet boom. So, dating myself, I came out of law school in the mid-90s. So my work, my entire professional life has been tied to the emergence of the internet, first in its very earliest days until, what we have today. So that's been my interest, which is, working with companies and businesses to deliver new technology at big scale, right, that both, makes money and changes the world. And so that's what interested me about Bitcoin and blockchain technologies. Not that I didn't think about whether Craig is Satoshi or not. So I preface that by saying it's not that the topic of whether he's Satoshi was relevant to me, but it's not the main reason I decided I wanted to work with them or Nchain and, and became its CEO. I was interested in his stated mission to scale the Bitcoin protocol and blockchain much bigger so that you could process far more transactions on it at higher volume with lower costs, lower mining fees, and then scale the blockchain so that it could support the data capabilities people are doing now on all the other chains, tokens, right? Writing smart contracts, because on BTC, the Bitcoin network, that was not possible given the small block size. They're having that fight right now because there's different competing, Bitcoin protocols that everyone's fighting about, because it fights this question: what is Bitcoin meant to be just for handling a store of value or payments, or is it meant to be able to do more, right? Things that you can do on Ethereum or Solana, for example. So that I thought was a fascinating question, and it threw me into the middle hot battles of the time. This is around 2016, right? 17 of the Bitcoin scaling wars, which that was some hot battles. So that's what started the journey and sort of thrust me into a world where you can read about it, but when you're living it, it's like it's a very different experience. It was heated. There's a lot of people coming at you, right, saying he's a fraud. What are you doing working with him? Because I had a very blue chip reputation. So to answer the critical question everybody wants to know, I do believe, from everything I know, that Craig Wright was involved in the creation of Bitcoin. What is Satoshi? It's a hard question to answer. Even I think I haven't talked to him in years, but I think he would sort of go, well, what does that mean? Satoshi's the name on a white paper, right? But will we ever know whether one person wrote that white paper, whether one person designed? He claims he is the main architect and designer of the concept of Bitcoin, its system, drafted the white paper, but he even acknowledges he had help. If you talk to him, you read his testimony or interviews, that it wasn't done alone. And people I know and am friends with who were very early participants in even prior attempts to create a digital currency, sort of kind of in this inner circle of the early efforts to create a cryptocurrency or digital cash system, they'll acknowledge that he was involved. Does it mean he is the primary creator and architect? I wasn't there, so I only know what people tell me, right?
True.
And so I think more likely than not, but I'll never be able to say that with absolute certainty. Did I believe it enough to be able to advocate for the mission, which is scale Bitcoin bigger so it's more useful? Yes. And I think, looking back in time, no matter what people think of Craig, whether he's, and I disagreed with a lot of his choices he made down the road, which is ultimately the reason I left. It wasn't because I didn't believe in BSV's mission. I disagreed with the whole lawsuit strategy, which I think people are surprised to hear, because I was the lawyer, in the leadership group. I thought we should win in the technology battlefield and the industry battlefield, not use the courtroom as a battlefield to try and prove this very controversial question of whether you're Satoshi or not. And I wish, I was a lawyer and a very good lawyer, and sometimes you wish people would listen to you on that. As someone who actually had to litigate and go to court and conduct trials, right, and argue to judges and juries and know what's convincing or not. And so I do believe he was involved in its creation. What percentage role he played, I'll never know. I know what he's told me. I know what other people have told me. And I think even some of his harshest critics will acknowledge he was involved. And I guess that's what I have to say about it now.
In fact, I had very lengthy conversation with David Chum on my podcast,
Yes.
where I was driving him from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. And
very smart man.
Very, very smart man. And I think, I feel for people like David Chum, to be honest, because it clearly shows that just being smart academically does not translate to business success.
Correct.
So
Yes.
2 years ago, he was talking to me about an idea where if I owe you some money, I can give you a small part of my property to you via RWA, right? I think now when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, what a fantastic idea, because it has liquidity, and then you can actually trade with it, and that is what people did to promote Bitcoin. Another very good friend of mine, Nick Spanos, gave out Bitcoin randomly to people to come and be a part of.
I've met Nick several times.
Yeah, Nick. So I call Nick the original gangster of Bitcoin, because he actually he was a manager at a nightclub. So if you have spoken to him and if you see his style is still has a lot of suave to it, the way he puts up a cigarette, the way he kind of wears the
he
glasses.
belongs in a movie from Martin Scorsese.
Yes,
right?
Yes. In fact, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Let me get this again. So guys, we are live right now, where I think about 30,000 odd people are watching us. Tell us what you said.
Nick Spanos, you look like you should be an actor in a Martin Scorsese film. Martin Scorsese, go cast Nick Spanos for your Bitcoin movie.
Absolutely. Very, very
And then you can put him with Brock
well
Pierce, child actor, and then you know, who I know as well, and I've talked to Brock as well. And so, you put them together, there's a good Bitcoin movie right there.
Maybe after this term, Brock Pierce has...
It'll be called The Bitcoin Gangsters of New York. Martin Scorsese, a film by Martin Scorsese.
Good one there.
But if it's Christopher Nolan directing it as the Bitcoin Odyssey, then it's a totally different cast. Yeah, then it's much more polished people. It's people like me, fine-tuned. But let me. Can I add one more point?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know why people are fascinated by this question, and when of whether Craig Satoshi or who Satoshi is, I definitely have my thoughts from things I have seen behind the scenes and all the people I've talked to that are early in the industry. Some of the people you've mentioned and others. I always tried to make clear when I was president of BSV, which is a split of the Bitcoin network. First, it was split into Bitcoin Cash, right? And then we supported Bitcoin Cash and worked with the protocol developer groups there. I helped to, arrange some of the meetings between us with the other protocol developer groups. And then we had our disagreements, which led to the split of BSV. I was always trying to be very clear that, I'm a big believer in utility of blockchains. If you watch any of my old speeches and interviews, I've said that, a million times. Utility. And that's what scaling is for. And that's what people see now when the blockchains cannot scale, right? And they can't support the usages that people want without some trade-offs. And so I always said, yes, do I believe Craig was involved in creating Bitcoin? And can you call him Satoshi Nakamoto? I think there is merit to that. But I always wanted people to support BSV, build on BSV, because of the technological underpinnings and foundation of it. Because you can't ask startup entrepreneurs, big enterprises, governments to build on use your blockchain just because he's a blank, right? For example, would you go build on Ethereum just because Vitalik was involved in its creation? Maybe at one point, but today that's not how people choose. And as technology ecosystems mature, just like the internet did, you want real businesses to use real products and real applications on a real blockchain. So that choice has to be made on fundamentals that are unrelated to whether he's Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, does his involvement in the creation of Bitcoin at an early stage inform the thinking and philosophy behind why we should scale, why we should look at Satoshi's early writings and say, oh yeah, it needs to be able to compete with the Visa network in terms of processing speed, right? That, on the debate over whether or not they'd be too centralized with miners, Satoshi wrote that he predicted it would move to mining farms, right? As opposed to having, thousands and thousands of individual miners. So that's why it was relevant to my work. But it's not why I ever asked anyone to support BSV.
Interesting. In fact, I've personally been to a couple of BSV workshops, which Salman was doing in his older
Did you come to our
office.
BitUngels conference in 2022? I think that's the last one I led, and
I can't remember. I don't think I did, but I've come down to your office multiple times because Salman turned out to be a very, very fascinating guy.
Fantastic.
Very humble
that's
guy.
Salman Anshum, Chief Mate and CEO, founder of InvoiceMate and DeFi protocol by InvoiceMate. That's my plug. because I'm an early investor and sort of chair our advisory board.
Absolutely. And I love that you talk about utility. I think we all were talking about utilities, but
People
the
don't talk
overall
about it enough.
consensus. But let me tell you, the overall consensus clearly shows that nobody gives a fuck about it. Otherwise, meme coins wouldn't have gone through the roof, right? And I think meme coins has brought in more attention to blockchain than utility ever could. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
Oh, I agree. See, I have been in the industry long enough. I've been in early, so over a decade now, right, as a business leader, in addition to my time as a lawyer, that I've seen all what I call the quick cycles. Every 12 to 18 months, there's another hot trend with a new acronym, right? First, it was ICO started this, and then STOs, right? And eventually then became NFTs for a while. Then the meme coins, and now it's RWAs, which is not a new thing. It's just everyone's, sort of giving we love acronyms in this industry. And what drives those is, I can make money fast because I can mint blank and then I can sell it for value. Then I can give it to market makers and get it on exchanges with some side agreements, and then, get it pumped up in price. And then I can sell, my holdings, and my early friends and investors can do the same. And this is the thing that gives the Web3 blockchain digital asset world such a terrible reputation in the institutional world from which I come from, which is why my friends from law, from Silicon Valley, from finance, the entertainment media industry were slower to get into blockchain and crypto because they viewed it as, ooh, that seems shady. And so the benefit of this type of decentralized technology is that you can just go create your own coin, token, even an entire new blockchain. In the Silicon Valley days, .com boom, people did try to make money fast, but you had to make a company, you had to raise capital, and you had to find an exit, right? Even if you were going to start, pets.com or whatever it is. But here you just have to make something, a coin or a token on a blockchain, and that's very easy to do. And so because of that, I'm a big believer and proponent, as you see from my work, on business utility and use of blockchain for real value, for real users, for real good, whether it's consumers or business.
But I agree with you, but I'm saying that the overall consensus, because they're starting to
more. It's just for a period of time, so much oxygen in the industry in terms of investment, right? In terms of where the developers wanted to spend their time and the entrepreneurs wanted to spend their time was in get rich fast business approaches, usually with a token. And they'd have a business model and they slap a token on it, right? And so, but now that has been fading and it's harder and harder to get investment for a blockchain business, just having a token isn't enough. The blockchain VCs, and I know a lot of them, I'm friends with a lot of them, for a period of time, they invested in ventures with a product and a token, and they sort of got burned when the tokens, did not perform well and they could not sell them at the height of their market price. And so they are more reluctant to do that now. So the ability to get investment capital for a Web3 venture with one of these ways to get money fast, token, meme coin, that is fading and has faded. And so I think that sucked up the oxygen in the industry for a long, long time. And that's why you don't see, my friends always ask me, how's blockchain doing? How's crypto doing? And I said, well, what do you mean? There's the market prices, which is all people pay attention to in the news. Oh, Bitcoin today is, 68,000 or 69,000. But in terms of actual use of blockchain in a way that's meaningful in any of our lives, it's still very, very, very limited.
Yeah. In fact, we go live every Friday.
It takes a long time to build a real business with real value, which is why Salman, with Invoice Made, it's taken him a while to pivot and emerge with business models that actually make meaningful use of it. It didn't happen overnight.
Clearly. And I was saying that every Friday we go live with this legendary gentleman called Michael Turpin.
Yep.
Where we talk about the week in Bitcoin and what is expected in the next week. And to be honest, he's been very consistent. In fact, the first episode, I took the liberty of calling him, "You're either a god or a con man." And in the next episode, we will be able to decode that, because his uh, uh, predictions are very scary but accurate too, in terms of the Satoshi's vision, in terms of how he has been moving in terms of the space, and the claims uh, that about every 1,300 and odd days, Bitcoin goes rock bottom, and then the way he explains it is mind blowing. And then when you backtest everything he says, I feel so stupid for not just following what he did. I would have had a lot more than I currently have.
Sure. And I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with people buying and trading Bitcoin as an investment asset, trying to predict the market prices, because that's what people do, and public equity markets as well. But if you go back to the original Bitcoin white paper and what was the stated purpose of Bitcoin, it was not created to be an investment asset. It's okay that it's become one. That's my position about it all. All these years later, now that I've lived this long life in it, people fought this battle. Do we scale it so it's more useful for payments and for data usages, right? That battle was not won by BCH or BSV. Now the battle is happening still again in BTC with these competing protocols. But I've met Michael. I like Michael, and I don't have a problem with anyone talking about predicting the trading prices and stuff. But when you think about it, is that what it was all created to be? Where we have an industry where everyone's sitting around just pontificating about its market price and why it goes up and down.
No,
That's
actually, I
my
think
feeling. And I have no problem with it. I've traded Bitcoin, so it's not that I'm above it myself. I just you start going back to, well, what was it used for? And now the money being made on it, other than trading, is like leveraging it. Right? It's an asset. I can lend it. I can stake it, which is fine too. It's better than nothing. But I just I wish we had, over the last 10 years, been in this industry so long. I look back and go, gosh, I wish we could claim more really beneficial use of the technology.
Well, for our viewers, 10 years in crypto. So like every year in crypto, like we live in dog years. Every year is like 4 or 5 years. That's the kind of pressure we get into at times, and that is how quick the industry is kind of churning out new ideas and new buzzwords, as Jimmy mentioned. But Jimmy, I'm very lucky in terms of the people that I get to pick my brains. The people who I get to pick their brains. Though a lot of people talk about the philosophy, like how you just mentioned. But again, I'm going to say that the overall consensus clearly wants to just make money. Nobody really cares, because I'll tell you, I've been fortunate enough to speak at, I think, over 70, 78 odd crypto events around the world. And I see founders, I see CTOs going really deep and explaining the technology. But as a user, I have realized, because though I'm from Bangalore, the Silicon Valley of India, I have no tech experience.
Yes.
And there's something that I've realized, is that the end user does not give a damn if it's app, or if it is an app or a DApp or a website. He does not give a damn. He or she does not give a damn if it is made on Java, on React, on a blockchain. They do not care about it. They only care about convenience. And I understood that back in 2012, because I founded India's first midnight food home delivery service from Bangalore. Because Bangalore, though it's this massive tech city, we at least back then had the highest number of clubs per capita in the world. It's a massive party town and tech town. But I realized that people are lazy. Now the entire convenience economy of getting things delivered to you in 10, 15 minutes has now come into the mainstream. But the convenience, like, people only care about convenience. People only care about making money. Very, very few people actually wonder in terms of the philosophy that you mentioned. There's another thing that I want to bring in mind, right? I am now moving home, and I just want to make sure that, with all the AI tech that we have, I've asked my AI agents to actually look for houses for me. So as of now, because the dashboard is right in front of me, it has found 80 houses for me. which would have practically taken me over a day in terms of my requirements and my budgets. But it's so convenient to do this. I also made sure that it gave me a button to send messages directly, which is a different story, that my WhatsApp is blocked now because they don't prefer us using other agents other than Manus. But then the convenience is, and to be able to make money. Do you think that people like you and others who are actually promoting the utility of blockchain, but that is not what was in demand? In demand, it was, how could I make money? Do you think what you were supplying was not really needed in the masses to actually drive to what Bitcoin adoption could have been?
Well, that's a complicated question, but I absolutely agree. Most of the people who look into cryptocurrency, digital assets, they just want to make money. There's the consumers, the retail, the masses, especially in emerging countries, right? So I have mixed feelings about this. There's a lot of, when people say, oh, there's huge adoption, Pakistan, Nigeria, Vietnam are among the top countries for adoption of crypto Web3 in the world. Most of the adoption is buying coins and trading, right? Yeah. If you want to call that adoption, not using it to pay, right, a merchant or sending payments to each other. Let's be honest about that. Do I have a problem with that? No. Of course, people want to make money, especially people from poorer countries. It's just being from one and knowing how hard it is for people to rise above, lower income levels, right? I just don't want to see people, unnecessarily lose money, right? Because they're going in not understanding, here's the issue. People with crypto trading have unrealistic expectations. I have friends call me and say, I bought this coin. It's been 2 weeks. Nothing's happened. It didn't go up. I said, well, if you bought Apple stock or Tesla stock today, and in 2 weeks, it only went up like 2%, would you be complaining? They're like, no. I said, well, what makes you think that cryptocurrency is supposed to go up that fast? Because when it goes up that fast, can go down that fast. And so that's one of so some people make a lot of money on it and a lot of people don't because they don't have a trading strategy. So I have no problem with that. And I think that's fine. I think that for businesses as well, there was too much emphasis for startups in doing things that allow the company and its investors and founders to make money fast through tokens and meme coins. So it creates bad, bad behavior and bad examples for every good example that exists, if not more. And so you can't stop that. There's nothing really to do to stop that. I think that if more companies could create products and uses of tokens or cryptocurrency or blockchain that was either useful, it delivered a benefit to people, even if it wasn't about money, they would use it. They would not care what blockchain it's on. They wouldn't even care that it's on blockchain. Eventually it needs to be invisible infrastructure, right? That you shouldn't even know it's on blockchain. But you're right. People don't care. They just want to make money. And that's why they don't care if it's Solana or Ethereum or Cardano. They really don't care. And so it's going to be the ones that have the best networking and scaling and penetration that will win over time. So I think it's incumbent really more on the industry and people to find ways to build products that are useful, that either deliver a benefit to consumers that they'll want to use, whether they know it's on blockchain or not, or if it involves tokens or cryptocurrency that allows them to make money in a way that's more meaningful, but that takes longer. So look, I don't have a problem with the make money fast situations. It's just that I hate to see when people, get hurt by it, and that's more likely. So I always warn all my friends who ask me for advice about cryptocurrency. I said, look, if you have some money you want to take in and play around with, fine. But if you always have a trading strategy, this is my best advice for people. If it goes up a certain amount, a percentage, be prepared to trade it and get it off the table, or at least part of it. Because if it goes up that fast, it can go down that fast. And that's what people don't realize. Here's a good example. I was in Miami during Consensus, week this year in Miami. And I was staying, at this place, and I was at the pool for a little rest break. And the pool guy saw that I had like some crypto, merchandising around me. He said, oh, do you work in the space? And he said, yeah, I just bought some, I won't say the token, right? I bought this token last year and went way up.
No, go ahead.
And now it's way down. It was XRP, right? And he said, and now it's down below what I bought it. And what's happening? Should I hold it? Should I not? I said, well, when it went way up, why didn't you trade it, or at least some of it? Trade the amount you invested in. He said, well, because I thought it was going to keep going up. And I said to him, this is what I would say, audience, why did you think that?
Good one.
What made you think it was going to keep going up? It was gone up so fast, and it did for a while. I watched it, right? And then he's like, and he looked at me, and he was just, he must have been like 22 years old, right? Working at the pool, and he just looked at me and said, "Wow, that's a good point." He said, "I just assumed it was going to keep going up," and I said, "That's the problem." I said, "So you just have to have a trading strategy if you're going to trade or stake or whatever. Once you make a certain amount, take some of it off the table, right? Because then you could have traded it back." I said, if it had gone up a certain amount, you could have taken half of it out, held it, and then when it collapsed again in price, you could have bought back in at a lower price. He's like, "Oh, that's a really good point." And I said, yeah, and that's what people, they go in without a trading strategy, and they have unrealistic expectations. They expect it's going to be the next Bitcoin and keep going up and up and up and up and up and up and up.
In fact, what you said was extremely right. And I personally believe that the 22-year-old guy, I don't know how much he lost, or rather how much is in red, but even if it is $2,000-3,000, which perhaps would have been a decent amount of money for a 22-year-old, irrespective of which part of the world they are from. But I think that is the best lesson that they can invest in understanding the markets, because I've not seen anybody learning the market being matured until and unless they have lost money.
Yes,
I think that's the fee that they pay. We all have paid that fee.
Same for me. I'm not a super active trader, but I have, and obviously I've been in the industry a long time, and I've made some nice big chunks of money, and I've lost some chunks of money, and it teaches you lessons. My whole journey with Bitcoin and N-Chain and the Bitcoin scaling wars and BSV, it was painful. Right. But some of the best lessons I learned, business and tech wise, came from that whole experience. So I don't regret it. And so it's, I talk about win a lot, right? Like my last name, and encouraging people to win. You learn to win by losing sometimes.
100%. In fact, I had a similar conversation with a friend of mine. They bought XRP, I think, at 1.5, and it went up to 315.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Bro, it's going to go to $100. And I look at him and I'm like, "No, sell it." Right? Because I think the problem is people don't know themselves, right? People don't know what is their fuck you number. If they know their exit number, it's going to make it so much easier for them. But I think anybody who reads, 50x, 100x stories,
yes,
want to jump on that bandwagon, but the real wealth is built by this American janitor who worked all his life and then died with $7 million. These are guys who actually compounding of wealth is beauty. In 6 months, if you can double your capital, it is unbelievable.
Yes, and then know that and take it off. So the other practical way I frame it for people who ask me for advice, and I said this to this nice young pool boy, hello, pool guy in Miami, maybe I'll see you again. I said, think about it. I said, do you go to the casino? Some people sometimes like to play in Las Vegas, right? And I said, when you're at the casino table and because people invariably, most people lose money at casinos, right? But if you're at the casino table, you're playing blackjack or poker, whatever it is, and you double your money or triple your money, which can be, that could be hard at a casino. Would you stay at the table or walk away from the table? He said, I'd probably walk away from the table. I said, exactly. And you need to learn to do that with crypto.
On that note, I have so many more questions for you, but I would love to have you back.
Sure.
Jimmy, thank you so much for being a part of this. We do this every day. It's called Aura 8. We are live on Binance Square, which is our main platform. But I hope everybody out there, all the traders, got to hear this amazing story of a kid who was 2 years old, had no idea what was happening, moved to a country that was even alien to him while growing up in the first few years, and then going ahead and making his parents proud, specifically in the industry that his father had pursued a career. Now, as a father, I understand that what a proud moment it would have been for his dad, and this beautiful experience and conversations. If there's one thing that you want to say to that kid in Vietnam, to that kid in India, to that kid in Pakistan, especially now with agentic AI, right? I these days I don't even talk about AI. I just talk about agentic AI
Yes.
and automations coming in, because I actually met a student who's studying in Dubai in the space of logistics. My first question was, have you do you have a lesson on blockchain in logistics? Now we know VChain and we know how
Mhm.
important blockchain is in this space. Uh, she said no. I'm like, okay. What about use of AI, agentic AI, workflows, and all the kind of questions that we would like to hear? And she said no. So I know it for a fact that when she'll be passing out of her education, which assuming her parents have taken a loan or paid a very hefty price for it, considering studying in Dubai, there are millions of people, millions of students like her around the world who have no idea what's going to hit them in a few days. So, what is your piece of suggestion that you would like to give it to them
About
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 being
what?
ready for the future?
Oh,
About so our
yes.
tagline is the future of money, right?
Got it.
So, what
Mhm.
would you tell them?
Well, I feel like I'm turning into one of those old people who's like, "Oh, I can't keep up with the technology that's going on." Right? Rawr, rawr. I and I look. I work knee deep in the industry. I work with companies in AI and Web3 and tokens and all kinds. Sports tech. So I'm constantly having to read and learn things, and and it's a challenge. And so for young people, I think that first of all, you are all growing up. I'm going to talk to you young people at a time where there's so much amazing technology that it has accelerated at a speed far faster than when I was young, right? With the far faster, new things are coming out far faster. It's really hard to keep track of every little thing that's coming out. I would give this piece of advice to you. We all cannot be great at everything. You have to really think about, and I do this, made a list for myself the other day. What are the things I think I'm uniquely best at, most uniquely interested in? And when you look at the future of money, crypto, AI, whatever it is technology that you're interested in, how does the one, two, or three things you are best at, that you believe and are most passionate about in doing, not as a job, what do you like to spend your day and time doing? Is it playing music? Is it speaking? Is it coding? Whatever it is, figure out how to learn what is the most cutting edge forefront innovations of that in those technologies, and then apply yourself there, because it's happening so fast. It's too difficult to try and cover and learn everything. And then if you want to either work in the industry, found and start your own venture in the industry, that will help hopefully guide you to something more unique and specific. Because when people come pitch me about like, oh, I'm launching a new blank company, and it's very general, I have to tell them it's really hard to stand out in the marketplace. So I think the best piece of advice I would give people in terms of the future of money and the future of tech and your place in that starts by looking at you internally and going, what am I best at? And what am I most interested in doing, not kind of professionally or as a job? What are just things I like to spend my time doing? And then how can I find out where that fits into the most cutting edge part of some new technology I'm interested in? That's what I would say, which is starting from inside you, not starting from the tech. And that hopefully will guide you, because you have to like what you're doing every day. And if you don't like what you're doing and can't apply that to the future of money, the future of AI, the future of environmental technology, whatever it is, then you're not going to be happy. It's why I left law. I was very good at it, but I wasn't happy at it because I wasn't using the skills I was most passionate about.
Very well said, Jimmy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Would
you.
love to have you back, and I
Absolutely. And
mean
I
it.
want that drive. We need to do this drive somewhere.
Yes, yes, we should. In fact, I think I might be coming to US in September.
I probably will not be here. I
So
might be here. So I will be in New
okay,
York plugging, my friends, if the week of September 13th through 19th, during UN Blockchain Week, they are running a series of events,
okay, yes.
blockchain related. The Porters, David and Bruce Porter,
Yes.
running. And I'll be speaking several times there at UN Blockchain Week, at the main conference, and several side events across that in New York City. From that's the week of September. I think it's like the 13th or 19th.
Sounds good.
Be there.
Thank you so much for your time once again.
All right, and say hi to
Just
your South Asian mom.
I will. 1 second. Yeah.